Hello, brothers. We're back with Alraune by Heinz Ewers, a 1929 translation of the 1911 book, I believe it was. And it is illustrated by Malon Blaine and translated by S. Guy Endore. Here on chapter 11, I believe. Yes, chapter 11. Let me open the channel on the computer so I can see the text from the adoring fans. Chapter 11, which recounts the end which Alraune brought upon the Privy Councillor. On the leap year night of this same winter, a storm blew up the Rhine. Coming from the south, it packed up the ice cakes floating down the river, piled them up mountain high, and dashed them against the old custom house. The wind ripped the roof from the Jesuit church. In the court garden, ancient linden trees were thrown down, and the stout, flat-bottomed boat of the swimming school was torn from its moorings and shattered against the stone bridge piers. The storm beat down upon Lendennick, too. 3 chimneys were blown off the town hall, and the old barn of the Honnenwerts was completely destroyed. But it wrought its greatest evil against the house of the 10 Brinkens, for there it blew out the perpetually burning lamps before the statue of Saint John of Nepomuk. That had not happened before in the memory of man, not in hundreds of years, and had those lamps ever been extinguished. True, the pious people of the village quickly filled the lamps with fresh oil and lit them again, but they claimed that this portended a great misfortune and predicted with certainty the end of the 10 Brinkens. The saint had signified that he would no longer protect the Lutheran house, and it was for that reason that he had let his lamps go out. For there was no storm on earth that could have extinguished them if he had not willed it so. Hello, bruvs. We're reading Alraune by Heinz Ewers. It's basically a retelling of the Frankenstein myth. It was a sign, so the people said, but a dark rumor that was whispered about had it that the storm had nothing to do with it. At midnight, Miss Ten Brinken herself had gone out, and it was who, and it was who had put out the lamps. All right, weird diction, but the prophecies of the people were no doubt without foundation, for despite the season of Lent, there were nightly festivals in the Ten Brinken house. The windows were always brightly lit, and music and singing and laughter was to be heard by the passer-by. It was Alraune's wish. She had to have distractions, she said, after the loss which she had suffered, and the Privy Councillor did as she wished. He crawled after her. Wherever she went, it seemed almost as though he had taken over Wolfchen's role. When she entered, his squinting glances were full of desire, and his covetous eyes never left her while she remained in the room. Oh, she noticed how hotly his slow blood beat through his arteries, and she would laugh out loud and toss her head. Her whims grew more and more wilful, her demands more and more extravagant. The old man gave in, but not without bargaining. Now she would have to scratch his bald head, now play up and down his arm with her rapid fingers. She must sit on his lap, or even kiss him, and repeatedly he demanded that she dress as a boy. Then she appeared in her riding outfit, or else in the lacy costume she had worn at the carnival dance. Then again she would present herself as a fisher's lad with an open shirt and naked legs, or else as an elevator boy in a close-fitting scarlet uniform showing her wide hips. At another time she donned the hunter's outfit of doeskin, or the clerical garment of Narissa, or the regal trappings of Prince Orlowski. Then again, she was Piccolo in a black frock coat, or a page in Rococo, or Euphorion in the stockinette and a blue tunic. The Privy Councillor would sit on the sofa and have her promenade before him. He rubbed his wet hands and looked furtively around the room. He could scarcely breathe as his mind sought for a way to begin. Then she would stand still right before him and look at him defiantly, provocatively. He crouched before her gaze and hunted in vain for words that would throw a veil about his desires. Then, laughing derisively, she would walk out. Just as soon as the latch clicked behind her, just as soon as he heard her clear laughter on the steps, all his thoughts gathered and formed into words, beautiful words. Now it was easy. Now he knew what to say, how to act. Frequently he would run to the door and call her back, and sometimes she would return. Well, she would ask, but he would not go on. Again the words failed him. Nothing, nothing, he would growl. That was the trouble. He lacked assurance, and so he looked around for a victim to reassure himself that he was still master of himself. He soon found one. The tinsmith had come to the house to mend old pots and had brought his 13-year-old daughter along. Come, Mary, he said, I've something to give to you. And he drew her into the library. A half hour later, the little girl slunk out like a sick animal of the forest. With wide, open, staring eyes, she crept along the wall, but the Privy Councillor strode triumphantly across the court toward the master house. A broad smile illuminated his ugly face. Well, now he was more sure of himself, but now Alraune kept out of his way. She would appear when he seemed calm, but just as soon as his eyes glowed with a wild desire, she left. She is playing with me too, the Privy Councillor muttered, gnashing his teeth. Once, as she arose from the table, he seized her hand. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. Yes, word for word, and yet he forgot it before he could speak. That made him mad, and the girl's haughty glance increased his rage, and with a quick move he had jumped up, turned her arm, and flung her on the divan. She screamed and fell, but in the twinkling of an eye, before he could reach her, she was back on her feet. She laughed so shrilly and so long that his ears ached, and then she walked out without a word. She kept to her rooms. She did not come down for tea or for dinner. For days he did not catch a glimpse of her. He stood before her door and begged. He promised her anything, everything, pleaded and prayed, but she would not open. He sent her letters, swore up and down never to offend her again, but she did not even answer him. Finally, when he had stood for hours whimpering at her door, she came out. Be quiet, she said. You annoy me. What do you want? He pleaded for pardon. He told her that it was a sudden attack, that he had lost control of himself for the moment. You lie, she declared evenly. Then he dropped all pretenses and told her how much he thirsted for her, how he could not breathe when she was not near him. He told her that he loved her. She mocked him, but nevertheless she consented to come to some agreement with him and laid down her demands. He bargained skillfully. He sought to gain a slight advantage, here or there. Once, oh, just only but once a week, she must come dressed as a boy. No, she cried, every day if I please to, and not at all if I don't choose to. Then he resigned himself to his fate. From that day he ceased to be an independent and an entity. He lived on only as Alraune's slave, as her obedient dog that whined about her and ate whatever crumbs she cared to throw to him. She allowed him to remain in his own house, only as one permits an old mangy animal around, simply because one is too apathetic to kill it. She gave him her orders, buy such and such flowers, I want a motorboat, invite so-and-so today and so for tomorrow. Go upstairs and get my handkerchief. He obeyed and felt that he was being richly repaid for his trouble. If she dressed as an Eton lad, with a high hat and big round collar, came down from her rooms and stretched out her little patent leather shoes that he might tie the silk laces. Sometimes when he was alone, he would wake up. Slowly, he would shake his ugly head from side to side and puzzle over what had actually taken place. Hello, bros. Had he not been accustomed to rule throughout more than a generation, was not his will law on the estate of Ten Brinken? It seemed to him as though he had a tumor growing in the center of his brain and slowly crushing his thoughts, or a poisonous insect had crawled in through his nose or ear and stung him, and now it whirred around close to his face and buzzed scornfully right before his eyes. Why didn't he kill the bug? He half rose, wrestling with a decision. It must come to an end soon, he muttered. But all this was forgotten just as soon as he caught sight of her. Then his eyes expanded, his hearing grew acute, and the faintest rustling of her silk rang in his head. His mighty nose sniffed the air that carried her tempting odor to his senses. His ancient fingers shook as with palsy. His tongue licked the saliva from his lips. All his thirsting senses crept after her. That was the strong cord that bound him to her. Mr. Sebastian Gontram made a special trip to Lendennick. He found the privy councillor in the library. I warn you, he said, take care. We're going to have a hard time to get this mess cleared up. You ought to give more attention to this matter, Your Excellency. I have no time, the privy councillor answered. That's none of my business, Mr. Gontram returned calmly. You've simply got to find time. You've not bothered about a thing these last few weeks. You're letting things go to the dogs. Mark my word, Your Excellency, you'll come to grief one of these days. Humph, the councillor sneered. What's up? I wrote you all about it, the King's Council answered, but you don't even seem to read my letters anymore. The former curator of the Wiesbaden Museum has written a pamphlet, as you know, in which he makes all kinds of assertions that brought him to court. He appealed to the verdict of experts. A commission was delegated to examine your pieces and has declared most of them spurious. All the newspapers are full of it, and there is no doubt that the accused will be absolved. Let him be, the privy councillor said. Very well, Your Excellency, just as you say, Gontram continued, but he has laid a new accusation against you at the office of the Crown Solicitor, and the courts will have to take action this time. Besides, that is far from being all. In the bankruptcy case of the Gerstenberg Smelting Works, the trustee, basing his charges on some reports, has filed an accusation of criminal bankruptcy and concealment of assets against you. A similar accusation has, you know, come from the liquidation proceedings in the Carpen brickyards. Finally, Attorney Kramer, representing the tinsmith Hamacher, appealed to the solicitor's office for a medical examination of Hamacher's daughter, and that has been granted. The child is a born liar, the privy councillor cried, an hysterical brat. All the better, the King's Council agreed. Then your innocence will become apparent. Furthermore, there is Matheson's suit for 50,000 marks for damage and reimbursement. He has lately filed a new accusation against you for fraud. In a new brief in the matter of the Plutus Company, the opposing lawyer has launched an accusation of forgery of documents and declares that he will take the necessary steps to introduce you before the criminal courts. You see how these cases multiply when you don't come to the office. Scarcely a day passes without a new suit. Are you done finally? The privy councillor exploded. No, said Mr. Gontram quietly. Far from it. That was just the small collection of flowers from the pretty bouquet that awaits your presence at the office. My urgent advice to you is to go at once to the city and get to work. Don't take these matters casually. But the privy councillor answered, I've already told you repeatedly that I have no time. You really oughtn't to bother me with such stupidities. The King's Council rose, put his papers back into his briefcase, and closed it thoughtfully. Just as you wish, he said. Besides, you probably know that a rumor is circulating that the Mulheim Credit Company is about to cease payments. Nonsense, he replied. Anyhow, I have scarcely a cent in it. Really? Mr. Gontram asked with some surprise. Just a half year ago, you put that bank back on a sound basis with 11 millions in order to strengthen your position in the Potash Trust. Why I myself sold the Duchess's mine shares for that very purpose. His Excellency Ten Brinken nodded. The Duchess, well, yes, true enough, but am I the Duchess? The king's counsel rocked his head reflectively. She'll lose her money, he murmured. What business is that of mine? The privy councillor shouted. Anyhow, we'll see what can be saved. He rose and drummed with his fingers on his desk. You're quite right, Mr. Gontram. I ought to take more trouble with these affairs. Please expect me at 6 in the city. I thank you. He shook hands with his lawyer and accompanied him to the door, but he did not drive into town that afternoon. 2 lieutenants came for tea, whereupon he slunk about the house and entered the room where they were, every now and then, on some pretext or other. He did not dare leave the house. He was jealous of every man with whom Alraune spoke. He was jealous of the chair upon which she sat, and the very carpet upon which her foot trod. Nor did he go to the next day, nor the following one. The king's council sent one messenger after another. Ten Brinken sent them away without an answer, and even disconnected his telephone in order not to be called. Then Gontram approached Alraune and told her that the privy councillor's presence was urgently required at the office. She rang for her car and sent her maid to the library to tell the privy councillor that he should get ready to go to town with her. He trembled with joy. This was the first time in weeks that she was going driving with him. He donned his fur coat, went out into the court, and held the door open for her. She did not speak a word to him, but it was enough for him that she permitted him to sit by her side. She drove at once to his office and stopped for him to get out. Where are you going? He asked. Shopping, she said. And he pleaded, will you come back for me? She smiled. I don't know, perhaps. And even her perhaps was enough to make him grateful. He walked up the flight of stairs and entered the door on the left-hand side. Here I am, he said. The king's council shoved a huge pile of documents towards him. Here is the junk, he said. A very pretty collection. Some old ones, too, that I thought were settled, have come to life again. And 3 new ones since the day before yesterday. The privy councillor sighed. Quite a pile. What's it all about, Mr. Gontram? Gontram shook his head. Wait until Manasse gets here. He'll tell you better than I can. He'll be here soon. I've just sent for him. He's gone to the examining magistrate in regard to the amateur affair. Amateur? The privy councillor inquired. Who's that? The tinker, the king's counsel reminded him. The doctor's report is very incriminating. The Crown Solicitor's office has ordered an inquiry. Here's the summons. This matter really seems to be more important than anything else just now. The privy councillor took up the documents and ran through them one after the other. But he was distracted by every ring of the bell, by every footstep in the hall. I have only a few minutes' time, he cried. Now I lost my spot. Oh, he said. The king's counsel shrugged his shoulders. Very calmly, he lit a fresh cigar. They waited, but the attorney still did not appear. Gontram telephoned to his office and then to the court, but could not catch him anywhere. The counselor pushed the documents aside. I'm in no mood to read these today, he said. Moreover, they don't interest me. Perhaps you are ill, Your Excellency, the king's counsel hazarded. He ordered wine and seltzer water. Then Alraune appeared. The privy councillor heard the auto drive up and stop. He jumped up at once, seized his fur coat, and ran out to meet her in the hall. Have you finished? She cried. Of course, he answered completely, but the king's counsel stepped between them. It isn't true, Miss Ten Brinken. We haven't even begun. We're waiting for Attorney Manasse. The old man exclaimed angrily, "Nonsense! It's of no importance at all. I'm driving with you, my child." She looked at the king's counsel, who said, "In my opinion, it is extremely important for your father." No, no, the privy councillor insisted, but Alraune decided. "You'll stay. Goodbye, Mr. Gontram," she cried, turned, and ran down the steps. He returned to the office, went over to the window, and watched her step into the car and drive away, and he remained there, standing there, looking down on the twilit street. Mr. Gontram had the lights turned on and sat down calmly at his desk and smoked and drank his wine. They waited. The offices were closed, and one by one the employees left, opened their umbrellas, and picked their way across the muddy street. The two of them did not say a word. Finally, the lawyer appeared. He bounded up the stairs and tore open the door. "Good evening," he growled, put his dripping umbrella in the corner, took off his galoshes, and threw his wet coat on the couch. "High time, colleague," said the king's counsel. "High time, yes, of course, high time," he returned. He went up to the privy councillor, stood right close to him, and shouted into his face, "The warrant is out." "What's that?" the privy councillor hissed. "What's that?" the lawyer mocked. "I saw it with my own eyes, the Hamacher case. Tomorrow morning, at the very latest, it will be served. We'll have to furnish bail," the king's counsel remarked carelessly. Little Manasse faced about. "Do you suppose I didn't think of that? I offered bail at once, 500,000, right off, rejected at the county court. There has been a sudden change of feeling against you, your excellency. I had rather thought something of the sort. The judge very coolly explained to me that I should submit my request in writing, but, he said, I'm afraid you won't have much success with it. Our evidence is positively crushing, and it behooves us to proceed with extraordinary caution. Those were his exact words. Not very edifying, eh? What? He poured himself out a glass of wine and drank it down in short sips. There's more I can tell you, your excellency. I met Attorney Meyer at court. He's representing our opponents in the Gerstenberg case, and has also recently been retained by the Huckingen parish, which just filed suit yesterday. I begged him to wait for me, and that is really why I'm so late. I had quite a long talk with him. What he told me is straight from the shoulder. We're all loyal to each other at the county court, thank God. From him, then, I learnt that our opposing lawyers held a long meeting the day before yesterday and decided to unite. A few representatives of the press were there, among them that sharp fellow from the Intelligencer, Dr. Landman. And you know, your excellency, that you haven't any money in that paper. All the guns are loaded and all the traps set this time, and I doubt if you'll get out of this very easily. The privy councillor turned to King's counsel Gontram. "What is your opinion?" But Manasse shouted, "And I tell you, you'll never find a way out. The rope is knotted, and it will be drawn. Then you'll swing, your excellency, until you get out of the way quick." "What would you advise, then?" the councillor asked. "Exactly the same advice that I gave the poor Dr. Monin, whose misfortune you have on your conscience. It was a nasty trick on your part, but what's the use of telling you that now? I advise you to liquidate your affairs as quickly as possible. Besides, we'll be able to do that without your presence. Pack your kit and make yourself scarce this very night. That's my advice." "The warrant will be published," the king's counsel suggested. "Of course," Manasse cried, "but it won't be done with any special emphasis. I spoke about that to my colleague Meyer, and he's of the same opinion. It's of no advantage to our opponents to have a scandal on their hands. Even the authorities would be glad to avoid an open trial. All they want to do is to render you innocuous, your excellency. They want to put a stop to your mischief, and they have the means to do it now. Let me assure you of that. But if you disappear, go live somewhere in a foreign country, we'll manage to wind up all your affairs. Of course, it'll cost a lot of money, but what's the difference? Even now, they'll have some consideration for you, if only for their own interests, in order not to throw this marvelous soup bone to the radical and socialist papers." He stopped and waited for an answer. His Excellency Ten Brinken walked up and down the room with slow, heavy, dragging strides. How long do you suppose I shall have to stay away? He asked at last. The little attorney turned to face him. How long? He barked. What a question. Just as long as you live. Be thankful of this one remaining possibility at least. Surely it's more pleasant to spend your millions in a pretty villa on the Riviera than to drag out your last years in jail. And it would come to that. Let me guarantee you, it is the authorities themselves who have opened this little door for you. They could just as well have signed the warrant today. In that case, you would have already been arrested. I think it's damn decent of them, and I'm afraid they would take it very badly if you didn't make use of this loophole. If you force them to proceed against you by remaining here, this will be your last night's sleep as a free man. The king's counsel spoke. Go travel. After what I hear now, I think it's the wisest thing to do. Absolutely, Manas snapped. The wisest. In fact, the only thing to do. Travel, Your Excellency. Go out into the world and let us never see hide nor hair of you again. And take the little miss along. All London Nick will praise you, and Cologne will thank you too. The Privy Councillor's attention was aroused for the first time this evening. His features gave signs of a little life. The fixed, apathetic mask shot with flickering lights of nervousness. Alraune, he whispered, Alraune, if she goes with me. Again and again he wiped his mighty brow with his heavy hand. He sat down and begged for a glass of wine. I believe you are right, gentlemen, he said, when he had drunk. I thank you both. Let us settle everything now, then. He took the topmost legal document, the Carpet Brickyards. Tell me about that, please. The lawyer calmly, expertly discussed the matter as though he were delivering a lecture. One after the other he considered all the cases, weighed the pros and cons, and gave his opinion as to the possibility of a defense. And the Privy Councillor listened carefully, interjected a word now and then, and every once in a while found some new possibility upon which to fight back. It was all as in the old days. With every moment his mind grew clearer and craftier. It seemed as though each new danger aroused his old suppleness in increased measure. He set aside a number of matters as comparatively innocuous, but a considerable number still remained which were capable of breaking his neck. He dictated a few letters, gave a quantity of directions, took down notes of various affairs, suggested counter-proposals and complaints. Then he studied the timetables and planned his trip and gave full instructions for the liquidation of his affairs and for the conduct of his defense until such time as he would again be in communication with them. And when he left the office, it was with the conviction that his affairs were all in good order. He took a taxi and rode out to London Nick, feeling very sure of himself and of the successful outcome of his plans. It was not until the servant opened the gate for him, not until he was crossing the court to his house, that his confidence left him. He asked for Alraune and took it as a good sign that no guests were present. The maid said that she had dined alone and was in her room at present. He went up and knocked at her door. Come in, he heard, and entered. I have to speak to you, he said. She was sitting at her secretaire and gave him only a curt glance. No, she cried, it doesn't suit me now. It's very important, he begged. It's a matter that can't be postponed. Okay. Struggle is real, too. She looked at him and carelessly crossed her legs. Not now, she answered. Go down. I'll be there in a half hour. He left, took off his fur coat, sat down on the sofa and waited, and he reflected on what he would say to her. He weighed every sentence, every single word. A full hour had passed before he heard her footsteps. He rose and opened the door. There she stood before him, clad as an elevator boy, in a tight-fitting scarlet uniform. Ah, he said, that's sweet of you. To reward you, she laughed, for having obeyed me so nicely today. And now tell me, what is the matter? The Privy Councillor exposed the whole business. He did not mince matters. He told her all the details just as they were, and she allowed him to finish his confession without interruption. It is really all your fault, he said. I would have easily disposed of all these cases separately as they arose, but I let them accumulate, neglected my affairs for you. Thus the Hydra grew her 100 heads. Bad, bad Hydra, she mocked. And now it's going to make so much trouble for poor old Hercules. Besides, it seems to me as if in this case the hero is the poisonous snake, and the monstrous Hydra the avenging deity. You're right, he agreed, looking at it from the people's angle. They have their common law, and I made my own. That's my only crime, really. I thought you would understand that. She laughed, pleased. Of course, father, why not? Am I reproaching you? Now tell me what you intend to do. He explained that they had to flee this very night. They could travel a bit and look the world over, London first or else Paris. There they would stay until they had purchased all they needed, then across the ocean, straight across America, then to Japan or else to India, just as she pleased, for they had all the time in the world, then to Palestine, Greece, Italy, and Spain. Wherever she liked, they would stay until she had enough of it, and finally they would purchase a pretty villa somewhere, either on the Garda Sea or else along the Riviera. Situated in some big gardens, of course, she would have her horses and her cars and even a yacht of her own. She would be free to entertain on a large scale. He wasn't stingy with his promises. He painted the future in bright colors and found ever some new fascinating detail to add to the picture. Finally, he ceased and put his question. Well, child, what do you say? Wouldn't you like to see all that? Would you not like to live in that manner? She sat on the edge of the table and dangled her legs. Oh, yes, she nodded, very much so. In fact, only what? He asked quickly. If you have another wish, express it. I promise surely to fulfill it. She laughed at him. Then fulfill this one for me. I do want to travel, only not with you. The privy councillor started, almost fell. He cramped himself on the back of a chair. He hunted for words, but could not find any. And she spoke. I would be so bored with you. You annoy me excessively. Without you. He laughed too, in an effort to make himself believe that she was jesting. But it is I who must travel, he said. I have to leave this very night. Go ahead, she said quietly. He tried to catch hold of her hands, but she put them in back of her. And you, Alraune, he pleaded. She said, I'll stay here. He began all over again, whined and begged. He told her that he needed her as much as the air he breathed. She ought to have pity on him. Very soon he would be 80 years of age, and surely he would not be a burden to her for very long. Then he threatened her, shouted that he would disinherit her and throw her out into the streets without a cent. Just try it, she exclaimed. He spoke on. He told her of the marvelous life that she would lead, and she was to be free, perfectly free. She was to have more liberty than any other girl ever had. She might do exactly as she pleased, and he would see to it that not a single one of her wishes remained unsatisfied. Only she must come with him and not leave him alone. She shook her head. I like it here. I haven't done anything. I'm going to stay here. She spoke quietly and without emphasis. She did not interrupt him, but let him talk and promise again and again. Just as soon, however, as he came back to his question, she shook her head. Finally, she jumped down from the table and delicately tripped past him to the door. It's very late, she said, and I am tired. I'm going to bed. Good night, father, and bon voyage. He barred the way and made a final attempt to persuade her. He stressed the fact that he was her father and discoursed concealing Jesus and discoursed concerning the duty of children as though he were a pastor. Whereupon she burst into laughter. That I may go to heaven, she stood near the sofa. Suddenly she sat down astride the arm and stretched out her leg. How do you like it? She cried, and swung her slender leg up and down before his eyes. He stared at her leg. He forgot what he wanted, forgot his projected flight and the danger that surrounded him. He could only see that slender, scarlet, boyish leg swinging before his eyes. I am a good child, she twittered. A very sweet little girl that is the joy and pride of her funny old father. Then she jumped up, lightly and nimbly, pulled his ear gently, and gave him a little pat on the cheek. Now, my dear father, she tinkled, have I accomplished my filial duties well? Then good night. Have a nice time, and don't let them catch you. Jail, they say, is a most uncomfortable place. And send me some nice picture postcards, will you? She had reached the door. Before she could rise, she bowed stiffly, curtly, like a boy, and put her hand to her little red cap. Farewell, Your Excellency, she cried. And here's the illustration. He forgot his projected flight and the danger that surrounded him. And don't make too much noise here below. If you have your things packed, you might disturb my sleep. He swayed towards her, but she ran up the steps hastily, and then he heard her door slam and her key creak in the lock. He wanted to run after her. Already he had laid one hand on the banister when he gave it up. He felt that she would never open that door, no matter how much he might plead. That door would remain closed to him, even were he to stand there throughout the night, till the gray dawn, until the constable came to fetch him in the morning. He stood there without moving. He listened to her light tread, crossing this way and that way through her room. Then silence. He slunk out of the house and bareheaded crossed the court beneath the heavy rain. He entered his library, hunted up a few matches, and lit a couple of candles on his desk. Then he plumped heavily into his chair. Who is she? He whispered. What is she? What a creature, he muttered. He unlocked the old mahogany desk, opened the drawer, and took out the leather-bound volume. He laid it before him and gazed fixedly at the cover. ATB, he read half aloud. Alraune, 10 Brinken. The game was over, totally finished. He felt that very clearly, and he had lost. There was not a single card left in his hand. It had been his own game. He himself had shuffled and dealt the cards. He had held all the trumps, and he had lost anyhow. He smiled grimly. Well, now he had to pay up. Pay up! Yes, of course, but in what coin? He looked at his watch. It was past 12. The men with the warrant of arrest would come not later than 7. That left him a little over 6 hours. They would be very polite, very considerate. They would take him to prison in his own car. Then the battle would begin. That wouldn't be so bad. He would defend himself through many long months. Oh, he would dispute his opponent's every motion, but finally, in the principal case, he would lose out anyhow. That was certain. There, Manas was right. And the end, jail. Or else, flight. But alone, all alone, without her. He felt how he hated her at this particular moment, but he realized keenly that he could not think of anything else except of her. He would run around the world without aim or purpose and see nothing, hear nothing, but her clear, twittering voice, her swinging red leg. He would die for lack of her. What difference did it make whether out in the world or in jail? That leg, that sweet, slender, boyish leg. Ah, how was he to live without that red leg? The game was over, and he had to pay up. Then better pay up at once, this very night, and settle all his debts with the one thing that he still had, his life. And he thought that since he was no longer worth anything, his partners would still be cheated by this, his last act. That made him feel better. Now he pondered how he could administer a last kick in the bargain. That would be of some satisfaction. He took his will out of his desk, according to which Alraune was to be his sole heir. He read it through and then carefully tore it up into little pieces. I have to make a new one, he whispered. But to whom? To whom? He took a sheet of paper, dipped his pen, and considered. There was his sister and her son, Frank Braun, who was his nephew. He hesitated. Frank Braun! Was it not he who had brought this presence to his house? This strange creature that had ruined him. He too must be punished. Oh, he would strike a blow at him, no less than at Alraune. The fellow had said, "You'll tempt God. You'll put a question to him that will be so arrogant that he will have to answer." Well, and now he had his answer. If he had to go under pitilessly, when then Frank Braun should at least share his fate, for was it not Frank Braun who had suggested this crazy idea to him? And now this very idea had become a sharp weapon, a first-class weapon. Alraune ten Brinken, his little daughter, she would bring him too to the same pass. He considered, he rocked his head to and fro and grinned with self-satisfaction as he relished the certainty of his final triumph, and without a pause he drew up his testament in his rapid, ugly handwriting. Alraune remained his heiress, she alone, but he left a legacy to his sister and another to his nephew, and he appointed the latter his executor and the guardian of Alraune until she became of age. Now he would have to come here and be in her presence and breathe the sultry air that was wafted from her lips. And the same fate that had befallen the others would overtake him. The Count, Dr. Monin, Wolf Gontram, and the chauffeur had all perished, and now Frank Braun would perish likewise, yes, even as he was perishing now. He laughed out loud, then he added a codicil that assigned his fortune to the university in case Alraune should die without heirs. Thus his nephew was cut off in any case. He signed and dated the sheet. Now he took the leather-bound volume and, having read it again, added the tale concerning the origin of the idea and conscientiously brought the whole story up to date. He finished with a short address to his nephew that fairly dripped with derision. "Try your luck," he wrote. "Too bad that I shan't be there when your turn comes. I should like to have seen that." He carefully blotted the wet ink, closed the book, and laid it back in the drawer, where he kept a number of other mementos. For instance, the Duchess's necklace, Gontram's mandrake, the dice box, and the white bullet-pierced card which he had taken from Count Geraldingen's vest pocket, and on which mascot was written next to the four-leaf clover. A bit of black clotted blood still adhered to it. He stepped up to the curtain and undid the silk rope that held it. With his long shears he snipped off an end and threw it in among the other articles in the drawer. "Mascot," he laughed. "Qu'apporte bonheur pour la maison." He hunted around the walls, mounted a chair finally, and with much effort took down a huge iron crucifix that hung on a heavy hook. He laid the cross carefully on the divan. "I beg your pardon," he grinned, "for moving you out. It's just for a short while, however. At the most a few hours, and meanwhile you will have an eminently worthy substitute." He fastened the rope about his neck, then threw a loop over the hook. He pulled at this arrangement to assure himself of its strength. Then he stepped on the chair for the second time. There the police found him early the next morning. The stool had fallen. He stood on the edge of it, nevertheless, just touching it with the toe of his shoe. It seemed as though he had repented of his act at the very last moment and had tried to save himself. His right eye was wide open and stared toward the door, and his thick blue tongue protruded. And there's an intermezzo. And now, perhaps, my sweet blonde sisterkin, the soft music of sleeping sinfulness comes to disturb the even calm of your silvery days. The laburnum's poisonous yellow falls in a golden shower where formerly lay the pale snow of acacias, and hot clematis spreads its deep blue where once blossomed peacefully drooping clusters of glycinias. The delicate play of erotic desires is sweet, but sweeter is the cruel battle of passion at night. And sweeter yet is the image of sleeping sin on a hot and drowsy summer afternoon. My gentle friend sleeps lightly, and one must not wake her, for she is never so beautiful as when she sleeps thus. I see her in the mirror, my sweet and lovely sin, reposing in a silken shift on the bed's white linen. Her hand, with its lightly curved fingers, falls carelessly over the bedside. I can see the golden rings I gave you glittering on your fingers. Your pink nails glow like the rosy dawn. It was your black maid, Fanny, that created these little masterpieces, and I can kiss them, but only in the mirror, the image of the transparent wonder that are your rosy nails. Only in the mirror, only in the mirror, for my admiring glances and the caressing breath of my lips must not rouse the sleeping sin, for then those delicate nails will grow into the sharp claws of a tiger and tear into my flesh. Your shapely head, framed with blonde curls, lies on the lace pillow. They fall about your head like an areola of golden flames, like the first sweet stir of a summer morning, and your small teeth gleam between your narrow lips, like the white opals on the bracelet of the moon goddess. I kiss your golden hair, sisterkin, and your gleaming teeth. In the mirror, only in the mirror, and my flattering glances and my lips light, breath, touch only the cold glass, for I know well that when hot sin is aroused, your milk white opals turn to mighty fangs, and your golden locks to fiery snakes. Then the tiger claws rip my flesh, and the sharp tooth tear, and the sharp teeth tear cruel and bloody gashes, and round about my head the flaming adders hiss, creep into my ears, and spurt their poison into my brain until my body boils with wild desires. The strap of your silken shift has slipped from your shoulder and left revealed two smiling childish breasts. They are like two white kittens just born, lifting their little pink snouts into the air. Do you see how I kiss them here in the mirror? An elf has not a lighter touch, for well I know if your eyes are aroused, then blue lightning will spring from them and strike my poor heart. Then my blood will pound and seethe and melt the bonds of iron that restrain the madness of lust. Then freed of its chains, the raging beast pounces on you to wreak its violence. Your sweet and childish breasts turn into the mighty bosom of an avenging fury. Claws tear and teeth bite in a mad mood of joy, and sin aroused bathes in pools of blood. But no, my glances are silent as the tread of mourning nuns at the grave of a saint, and my breath is as soft as the kiss of the Holy Ghost that turns the bread on the altar into the flesh of our Lord. I would not make I would not wake sweet sin. I would have her sleep and rest, for nothing, my lovely friend, is sweeter than chaste sin asleep. And that's the end of chapter 11, brubs. That's all. That's all.